The winter night was colder than usual, and the bustling city streets echoed with the sounds of laughter, car engines, and hurried footsteps. But among the brightness of neon lights and the warm glow coming from restaurants filled with wealthy customers, one young girl stood shivering on the corner of a lavish hotel. Her coat was thin, barely stitched together, her shoes torn at the edges, and her small hands red from the biting chill. She was only 14, though her weary eyes made her look older. Hunger had carved shadows into her face, and her body trembled not only from the cold but also from the ache of an empty stomach. For 3 days, she had barely eaten more than scraps, and tonight her desperation had finally pushed her into a place she never dared to step before, the grand dining hall of the city's most expensive restaurant. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of compassion to change someone's life, please don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, leave a comment about your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Tales so that stories like this can continue to reach hearts around the world. The restaurant was glittering that night. Chandeliers spilled golden light across polished marble floors, and men in tailored suits and women in elegant dresses laughed over courses of fine food. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, carrying silver trays with steaming bowls of soup and delicacies most people on the streets could never imagine tasting. And in the midst of that dazzling crowd of wealth and comfort, the poor girl stood hesitantly at the doorway, her eyes lowered, afraid to be seen yet too hungry to leave. The maitre d' frowned, but something about her thin frame and trembling lips made him pause before throwing her out. With a shaky voice, the girl whispered, barely audible, "Please, sir, could I just have some leftover soup?" The room went silent. Conversations froze mid-sentence, spoons clinked against bowls and then stilled, and every eye turned toward the fragile figure standing at the door. Some guests smirked, others shook their heads in annoyance at the interruption, and whispers began to ripple through the crowd. How dare she come here? This is no place for beggars. She should be removed immediately. The weight of their judgment pressed heavily in the air, but the girl stood, staring at the floor, clutching her stomach, ready to collapse from both hunger and humiliation. And then, from the center of the room, a tall man in an immaculate black suit stood up. He was known throughout the city, a wealthy businessman, the owner of several companies, a man of influence and immense power. His presence alone commanded respect, and the crowd watched silently as he stepped away from his luxurious table, leaving behind the finest cut of steak and a glass of wine. He walked slowly toward the girl, his polished shoes echoing against the floor, his sharp eyes fixed on her trembling figure. The girl lowered her head further, expecting harsh words, perhaps even being thrown into the street. But instead, the man stopped before her, and in a voice that carried both strength and gentleness, he said something that shocked everyone present. "Why would you ask for leftover soup, child, when you deserve a full meal?" Gasps filled the room. The whispers shifted, now filled with disbelief. The man turned to the maitre d' and gave a clear command, "Bring her the best we have on the menu. Tonight, she dines as my guest." The girl's eyes widened in disbelief, tears pooling as her lips quivered. She tried to speak, to say that she didn't belong here, that she only wanted a scrap to survive, but the man raised his hand softly, silencing her fear. "Sit with me," he said. "No child should ever have to beg for scraps in a world overflowing with plenty." The staff hurried to prepare the table. The man guided the girl gently toward his seat, ignoring the disapproving stares of other guests. Some whispered that he was being foolish, others that he was simply showing off. But as the girl sat down, wrapped in the glow of chandeliers she never dreamed of sitting beneath, her trembling stopped, and a quiet dignity returned to her fragile frame. Soon, steaming bowls of soup, warm bread, and a plate of food fit for a king were placed before her. She ate slowly at first, afraid it might be taken away, but with every bite, tears rolled down her cheeks, tears not only of relief but also of overwhelming gratitude. The man watched quietly, his face unreadable but his eyes filled with something deeper than pity. For him, this moment was not about charity. It was about humanity. He saw in her the reflection of a childhood he had almost forgotten, a past he had buried beneath layers of wealth and success. For once, the world's applause and business deals didn't matter. What mattered was the hungry child before him, and the truth that compassion was worth more than all the riches in the room. When the girl finally finished, leaning back with a soft sigh, the man asked her gently about her life. With halting words, she spoke of her mother who had fallen ill, of her younger brother waiting in the cold alley where they sometimes slept, and of how she had walked past this restaurant night after night, dreaming of even the smell of food. Her voice cracked as she confessed that she only asked for soup because she believed anything more would be too much for someone like her. The man's jaw tightened. He looked around the glittering hall, filled with people who had more than they could ever eat, and yet had glared at the girl for daring to ask for their leftovers. He felt the weight of truth pressing against his chest, that wealth without compassion was nothing more than emptiness dressed in gold. Standing again, he addressed the entire crowd, his voice carrying across the silent room, "You all came here tonight to enjoy abundance, to feast without worry. But outside these walls, children like her starve. What good is our wealth if we cannot open our hands to those in need? Let this night be a reminder that true greatness is not measured by what we own, but by what we give." Some lowered their eyes in shame, others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to accept his words. But there were also a few whose hearts stirred, whose eyes softened, realizing perhaps for the first time that kindness was not weakness, but strength. The man then asked the manager to prepare several more meals, packaged carefully, and handed them to the girl. "Take these to your brother and mother," he said. "And come back tomorrow. We will talk about your future." The girl could barely see through her tears as she clutched the warm packages to her chest. She tried to kneel, to thank him, but he stopped her gently, lifting her chin so she met his gaze. "Never lower yourself for kindness. You deserve dignity. Remember that." That night, the girl returned to her family with more food than they had seen in months. Her little brother's eyes widened with joy, and her mother wept, holding her children close as they ate together under the stars. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered in their hearts. In the weeks that followed, the man kept his word. He arranged for the girl and her brother to attend school, provided medical help for their mother, and made sure they had a small home where they could live safely. The girl's life transformed from one of despair to one filled with opportunity, not because of charity alone, but because someone powerful chose compassion over pride, and humanity over wealth. Years later, the girl, no longer frail, but strong and determined, stood on a stage in front of hundreds, graduating at the top of her class. In the crowd, the same rich man sat, his eyes shining with quiet pride. She spoke not just of her achievements but of that one night when a single act of kindness had changed everything. "I asked only for leftover soup," she said, her voice steady yet emotional, "but I was given dignity, hope, and a chance at life. That night, one man's answer didn't just feed my hunger, it awakened my future." The crowd rose to their feet in applause, many wiping away tears. The man smiled softly, knowing that his answer years ago had echoed far beyond that glittering dining hall, into the heart of a girl who would one day inspire countless others. If this story touched your heart, if you believe the world needs more compassion and second chances, please support Kindness Tales by liking this video, leaving a heartfelt comment, sharing it with friends, and subscribing so more people can be reminded of the power of kindness. And before you go, I have a special request. Comment below with the words, "Kindness changes lives," so that together, we can spread this message across the world.